Hello, hello. Welcome to
Hi.
our webinar. We we're live from Santa Monica, our Gerba Kawasaki headquarters here, and today we will be talking about philanthropy and its importance in our society. And for this webinar, we actually have the authority in philanthropy and donor advised funds in Dr. Al Osborne from UCLA. Dr. Osborne is UCLA Anderson's Senior Associate Dean for External Affairs. He is the founder and faculty director of the Price Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. He was also interim dean for UCLA Anderson from July 2018 through July 2019. And he is the chairman of Fidelity Charitable, which is the largest donor advised fund in the country. And he's been the chairman there for the last 4 years. Originally from Panama, it's my pleasure to introduce you, Dr. Osborne. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Danilo. It's a pleasure for us to have this conversation about philanthropy, and certainly in my capacity at Fidelity, I am delighted to be able to share some interesting things about philanthropy and what is happening in the space.
That's great. Again, thank you for your time and generosity. Let's get to it. So you mentioned you've been with Fidelity Charitable for a number of years, board of trustees for more than a decade, and chairman now for the last 4 years. As I said in the beginning, Fidelity Charitable is the largest donor advised fund in the country. So what trends have you seen in philanthropy and in giving back?
Well, let me begin by talking about a few trends in philanthropy that are concerning. And perhaps we can put a slide up that might make this conversation a little more direct at the moment. So one of the things that what I've done here in this slide is shared with you what I see as some of the troubling trends and really the hopeful trends. Let me take the troubling first. I am worried that there has been a decline in the number of households who participate in philanthropy. The Lilly Family School of Philanthropy did a study that showed that a broad and consistent decline of over 13 percentage points in the share of households who gave in 2016 as opposed to 2000. This particular decline translates into something like 20 million Americans that no longer give to charitable institutions, at least not in the way in which the School of Philanthropy has captured that data. If you back to the original slide, we're moving a little bit ahead of there's go back to the first slide. Here we are. Stay on this slide for a while. I'll let you know when we want to move it. The other thing that troubles me, Danilo, is the increase in the wealth gap. The richest households are doing very well at an increasing rate. The middle class is floundering, and the numbers are staggering in terms of the wealth regard. According to the Pew Research Center, top 5% of households made up 23% of all U.S. income, and we know that 0.1% of all U.S. income it makes almost as much as the bottom 50%. So this widening gap between rich households and the middle class is disturbing to me. Another troubling trend in philanthropy is there is some distrust of institutions and non-for-profits and individuals. Again, the Pew talked about adults believe that there's declining in trust, and we see it with trust about how they feel about the government, and then how they feel in many cases about each other, with 64% saying that they really necessarily don't think they can trust one another. And of course, the declining support of social programs sets the stage, as well as the fragility of our democracy and the huge political differences that have people questioning what commitment they want to make to the society. But I'm hopeful. And let's just look at some of the hopeful trends. I'm delighted by what I see in recent months as the outpouring of support from individuals and corporations, partly as a result of COVID-19 and the concerns for racial inequality. I'm very hopeful because the growing influence of the next generations, the millennials, who are committed to purposeful lives and meaning, issues like sustainability, give me great hope. And there's a number of organizations that have been able to share what those values are that lead them to want to be important in philanthropy. The volunteer report, they're spending more of their time helping out. We find that the statistics for millennials are even better than those compared to, say, baby boomers of my generation and even Generation X. They're more likely to volunteer and help out, and they're more likely to give financial support financial support to nonprofits in the pandemic era than anybody else. So the other thing I think is their attitude.
Mm-hmm.
They show a real preference for working in organizations that are have values that are aligned with how they view the world, and I see that trend increasing. A couple of others here, and these are just selective. There may be more. Is I
Sure.
think with the digital transformation, Danilo, that's going on in society, new platforms that make it easy for participation
Mm-hmm.
across the entire spectrum of our society is pretty good. The millennials are particularly excellent at working with apps like Venmo, PayPal, you name it. They know what
Mm-hmm.
to do. And that speaks well for Fidelity Charitable, which I'll talk about in a minute, because it's a truly digital connection to philanthropy. And finally, let me just say that I see collaboration because this is really the only way in which we're going to be able to work. We're across private and non-for-profit sectors. Institutions are coming together to address the intractable problems of our society, and they want to have impact. And I think DAFs, donor advised funds, which I'll talk about a little bit later, allow purpose and people to plan in this regard. So, how do I balance all of this? I think it can be turned around, and technology and the next generation, I think, will help us.
Yeah, that's definitely some encouraging news as millennials become one of the largest generations in our country. And as they age and discover more purpose, I'm sure philanthropy will be top of their list in terms of what to do with their money as well. So thanks for sharing that. On the top of giving, what insights shape a person's giving? If you don't mind even going into your own individual philanthropy, like what shapes your giving, what drives you to promote philanthropy as a way to better our society?
That's a great question. Why do people give to charity? Um, I think people have to believe in the mission of an organization to give. That somehow this organization is doing something that matters to them. People are altruistic, and actually, research shows that people get pleasure in giving pleasure. So it's pleasurable to give.
Yeah,
You feel good about it. Uh,
absolutely.
and if you're making a difference and having impact, you feel even better about it. Uh, so positive feelings is a big part of it. People also give because they have a personal connection to a situation.
Hmm.
Imagine I give to cancer because someone I knew passed from that dreaded disease, and so on. Or I just don't like seeing homeless veterans, and so
Hmm.
people make the choices with a personal connection. And finally, we got to remember now, if you give under our laws, there's a tax benefit. So there's a financial benefit to giving that also has to be taken into account. Uh, the But my favorite is you give and you give back because you want to set an example for others,
Hmm.
particularly your children. Our society deserves empathy and the kind of care for one another as the human race, and philanthropy allows us to get into that. And so I'm a big proponent in giving back. But having said that, and I have to say that we have to worry about what stops people from giving
Okay.
to charity. Aside from some of the trends I mentioned earlier, a big reason is they do not know how their donation or the gift was used, or they thought it wasn't used appropriately, or there was a lack of communication in the purposes that were intended, and that can stop giving. So
Hmm.
stopping giving is not as good as we would like, but it happens, and it's something that can be avoided. Now, as to my own personal giving, I should say that I have a donor advised fund. I will share that with you as well.
Sure.
But we've always been philanthropic in my family. My wife, my son. We support education. We support fellowships for students.
Hmm.
Uh, the arts is particularly important. And
Okay.
with the giving account, I've been able to plan and reliably set aside resources for philanthropy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And we do things that benefit disadvantaged, underrepresented minorities and children. I recently funded a, a fellowship in a research program in connection with one of my colleagues in partnership at the University of Washington to study some of the challenges facing minority communities in the form of scholarship and work that needs to be done in better understanding the business formation issues.
That's
And
great.
food banks and clinics and the occasional hurricane or Doctors Without Borders, for example,
Sure.
uh, or Save the Children is a charity that I'm willing
Yeah.
to support. In addition to my final favorite is our national parks.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. I know you're also big on early childhood education. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Head Start program and how one can contribute to that cause as well?
Dalino, delighted to do that. As you know, Head Start is the front lines of saving families and children at economic risk in our society. They serve almost 1 million children every day, all
That's
across
amazing.
this great land. At UCLA, I've been fortunate to be able to first work with Johnson and Johnson in establishing a program to help train leaders in the Head Start community to be more entrepreneurial, more
Hmm.
successful and strategic about what they're trying to do. And we've been doing that for over 30 years. And we've served hundreds of Head Start agencies. Uh, also, besides Head Start, I have to tell you, we also work with community clinics. So the
Hmm.
whole notion of those who working in the safety net have been an important passion of mine, both in terms of some of my own philanthropy, but more in terms of giving my time and talent. You know, in philanthropy, there are the three T's that we sometimes worry about. You
Okay.
give of your time and your talent, and then if you have it, you give some of your treasure. So that's always something that's useful to keep in mind. But time matters. And this generation, to me, is stepping up and helping in places like Head Start and community clinics.
That's great. I'll remember the three T's from now on. So thank you for that. So as you know, Gerber Kawasaki is a wealth management firm, and we advise over 7,000 families. What role can we play as financial advisors to our clients in philanthropy?
That's a very good question, and I've simplified this by another chart that you could put up for me there. I think as advisors, you can do a lot by having the conversation with your clients, where
Okay.
you talk to them about, because you're dealing with, in many cases, individuals who have some net worth, but maybe
Hmm.
they haven't thought about leveraging their net worth in a philanthropic way and making charitable contributions like they do, but perhaps
Mhm.
using other assets. For example, U.S. Trust did a study that looked at high net worth individuals, and 90% of them make contributions every year. Uh, but only 58% of the financial advisors had those conversations with their clients.
Mhm.
So there's room for having some more. Now, I think that this is good for advisors to have this conversation. I also
Absolutely.
think it's good for philanthropy because as you think about the sophistication that financial planners have as they look at the wealth portfolios of their clients, being able to think in terms, it's a natural entryway to think in terms about, well, what are you doing for philanthropy? Or
Mhm.
how do you think about these as you think about, so you're prepared to give sophisticated advice on this issue as well. And so
Mhm.
I'd encourage you to do that. You can help then with the conversation. Clients maximize the impact. You can talk about the tax situations and the
Mhm.
positions that different clients might be in, and you can help them choose the right vehicle. Some clients may prefer the private foundation route because of the
Mhm.
nature of the wealth. Others may want to choose a donor advised fund.
Mhm.
And there are different kinds of donor advised funds. Some national, as Fidelity Charitable is,
Mhm.
or you may want to choose a local community foundation uh, who may also have a donor advised fund. Or there
Mhm.
may be charities that focus on one issue that's important to you, being dedicated, for example, to women's rights or to issues of race, for example.
Mhm.
There are donor advised funds in all of these areas. And of course, you can just be better at giving by having the conversation if you choose to do it the old fashioned way. Uh,
Mhm.
that is, struggle at the end of every year before you, as you
Mhm.
think about what your income may or may not be, and file taxes. So but it's about the conversation. And I think financial planners today, wealth advisors are very important. And it's good to have that conversation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Osborne. You may not know this, but obviously philanthropy is very important to us as a firm. We encourage every one of our advisors to join a charity,
Mhm.
something that they're passionate about, and not just donate money, but also donate time to help the charity grow. And I'm proud to say a lot of my coworkers are board members of different charities for causes that they feel strongly about. We, as a firm, are major sponsors for the Venice Family Clinic. We do things for World Food Bank downtown, among some of the initiatives that we help here. So we can definitely increase our intensity in terms of speaking about philanthropy and donor advised funds, which we're going to talk about next with our clients to increase their awareness. I feel like a lot of times clients don't know how to go about donating, and because of the reasons that you mentioned in the beginning. So having this conversation with our clients, I think, is going to be key in growing and promoting this initiative even further.
Well, before we move on, I should say that the Venice Family Clinic is one of those organizations I've worked with. They have a Head Start program. They're
Great.
also a community clinic uh,
Mm-hmm.
serving the underserved. And as a little thing, they just celebrated 50 years this
That's right.
anniversary. And
Mm-hmm.
yours truly was named one of their 50 visionaries. So I,
Yeah.
I had a chance to relate to the Venice Family Clinic as well.
Congratulations once again.
Thank
I'm not
you.
surprised. So
Uh,
let's go back to your role as chairman of Fidelity Charitable. Over the last few years, it's become one of the largest grant makers in the country. Um, why do you think donor advised funds, or DAFs, as some people refer to, have grown so much in popularity?
um, well, let me ask one of your colleagues to put a slide up that will allow me to talk quickly about the donor advised fund next.
Okay.
Uh, First of all, we call it a DAF. It's a dedicated charitable investment account. It's a 501c3, and it's sponsored by uh, this public charity. I think some of the reason they have become quite popular, and we look at some of the statistics in the very next table in a minute, is because they make giving simple and easy. Uh, if you have a liquidity event or you want to give some money and you've established a DAF, you just make one tax deductible donation to begin with.
Mhm.
And then this money can be viewed uh, as as a savings account for charity is one the way I like to think about it, or your giving account. And you can go to it whenever you feel you want to make a charitable deduction without worrying about the kinds of issues that we face at the end of the year when we try to decide which charities we're trying to support. The money is set aside, the deduction has been taken, and then now you can decide strategically a lot better, do more research, better selection as to which charities you want to help support. Uh, so it has a tax efficiency to it that way. And more importantly, it also allows you to work with not just cash, but appreciated securities. They have a way of where you can give appreciated securities. And sometimes, in the cases of some of the more sophisticated national DAFs, certain illiquid assets like limited partnerships and so on, that they can then liquefy for you to then put in to your giving account. Uh, uh, I should tell you that it's at the best DAFs in the country today, it's a Amazon-like digital experience. Uh,
Mhm.
and I like that word, and it's state of the art. And clearly, while your giving account is perhaps sitting there, it is earning as an investment account. So you have the ability to be able to add more to the giving account as it grows. And if it's donor advised and your advisor works with you, you have the opportunity. To choose how you want to see your donor advised fund grow, and what grows and it earns is also what you can give away. You've gotten the tax deduction. The money is for charity, and it has to go to charity. And there are
Mhm.
concerns sometimes about that. That is to say, are people warehousing in their donor advised fund resources? And what is the flow of dollars to nonprofits? Is it fast or is it would have been faster? And that's a question. Some people
Mhm.
have a liquidity event, so they make a large gift. And so perhaps bunching and therefore maybe giving a little bit of what they've set aside every year off into the future. And there's some legitimate questions that some people have about whether or not, uh, and it goes to private foundations, the tax exemption is what you know.
Mhm.
Should the tax exemption be the same or different or whatever, as
Mhm.
opposed to other giving platforms? So while it's been very successful, and I think it's one of the best things since sliced bread, we have to worry about whether or not it is a vehicle that gets resources to charities in the
Mhm.
way we'd like.
Well, yeah,
So,
that's great.
if I can, Danilo, if you'd allow me to go to the next slide for a second,
Yeah,
I will
please
show
do.
some of the data here that gives you a sense of the size of the donor advised fund industry and what its growth has been. As of This is the later data that's provided as reported by the National Philanthropic Trust just recently. I haven't done 2020, the 2020 report, which will tell us about 2019,
Mhm.
is that there are some 728,000 donor advised funds, according to their data. If you think about last year, there was only 469,000. So that's a growth of about 55% year over year. If you look at it, say the last 4 years, number of donors, the growth on the CAGR is annual rate about 50%. So it's been growing very fast. On an
Mhm.
asset size, and 20 last year was something like 112 billion. It's now 121 billion, and that's a CAGR across the 4 years that I've shown here, 14%. Contributions, however, have grown a little faster. You can see that contributions are 37% billion this year across the industry, with a CAGR of almost 17%, but year over
Mhm.
year, 20%. So that's money that comes into the DAFs that's deposited in the way in which I talked about a saving account for future granting. And the amounts of
Mhm.
grants that were given out last year are in the order of 23 billion, which is a CAGR of 17% over the last 4 years. Statistics that people watch that's important is the payout ratio. Well, how much of what it is that is in the it is being saved for charity
Mhm.
actually is getting to charity. And donor advised funds have a good record where over the time period, they're doing better than 20% a year as
Okay.
we think about payouts of the order I've given you. And that compares to the 5% that private foundations are allowed to do. And I don't want to show the data here, but the private foundations over this time period and last year did a little bit over 6% relative to 20%. So that gives you a sense of the really, I think, the value of the donor advised fund. And some of the data shows that some funds at this rate will spend everything they set aside in 4 to 5 years.
That's amazing.
It's a great
Yeah,
information.
that's great. It seems like a no-brainer for someone who is wanting to give back. And I think the purpose of this webinar is exactly that, to at least educate our viewers, whom a lot of them are working for publicly traded companies whose stocks have done really well in the recent past, and maybe are sitting on appreciated securities that they can put into their own donor advised fund. They get a tax deduction right away. They get to direct how the money is invested so it can grow even more into the future. And then they get to choose who they name as their charities and causes that they want to contribute to. So it is the best thing since slice of bread, as you put it. Um, Obviously, we are happy to help our viewers, our listeners, our clients with setting up donor advised funds. But what other resources, reading material do you maybe recommend to our listeners out there?
Well, there's uh, I will talk a little bit about Fidelity Charitable, and the website is rich with a number of articles and books people can go to.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in some of the established, like, for example, I suggested the National Philanthropic Trust, for example, does a
Mm-hmm.
very good job. They have an annual report and it's available to you. The Chronicle for Philanthropy does a very good job of talking about what is going on, and there's several entities in the infrastructure like GuideStar and others that can give you information about specific charities based upon the IRS 990 data
Mm-hmm.
that is filed. If you're interested in specific things like impact investing, there are some wonderful books that can be available. And when everything fails, I just say Google philanthropy, Google impact investing, and you will see a rich array of material that rise to the top. But uh, I want to talk a little bit more about learning uh, philanthropy. And the best way I would say is get involved in a charity,
Mm-hmm.
and try out your propensity to give.
Mm-hmm.
That's and get committed to a cause. For example,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps you are worried about homelessness or veterans, or you are worried about healthcare. That's okay. Learn about it and get involved with a charity, and maybe start giving little bits of your time, maybe a little bit about your talent,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then so then you maybe put together a donor advised fund
Mm-hmm.
as a vehicle to then assist your strategic giving over time. And I can share a little bit about the data along these lines if you want to talk a little bit more about, say, Fidelity Charitable in this context.
Sure. I mean, what other information you have to share with us?
Okay. Well, what I wanted to hear is give you a sense of, and again, with all due disclosure, so you know, I'm a big believer in this particular vehicle for philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I'm privileged to be able to work with Fidelity Charitable. You know, it's the largest. It has almost 250,000 donors.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last 30 years, their donors have been given to advise on 47 billion in charity dollars. On the investments alone, though this time period, they were able to add another 11 billion that would not have been available except for this vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And they've helped 300,000 nonprofits. Uh,
Amazing.
if we think about the growth over time, there were 52,000 donors in 2010, and now it's 138,000. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can open a DAF at Fidelity with $0. All you need to do is go online, follow the three menu things, and you'll be able to do it. Now, the typical donor balance is less than 25,000,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but the 9% of them have balances over 250,000.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I've indicated to you, grant dollars are distributed in many cases 75% of the time over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Where do things stand now? Well, last year Fidelity did 7.3 billion uh, in contributions with
Mm-hmm.
225,000 donors supporting 155,000 charities. This year to date, uh, they've put out $6.3 billion at
Mm-hmm.
greater than 250,000 donors, hitting more than 330,000 nonprofits. It's a
Impressive.
remarkable story of philanthropy, and there are other donor advised funds and other community foundations and the like that are experiencing the growth because this has been a banner year for investments
Mm-hmm.
in and returns. And so
Mm-hmm.
I say, uh, uh, give, grow, or grant. I like the three G's here. I gave you the three T's. Now we'll talk about the three G's. Give, grow, and grant. And if you want to learn about it, follow the green arrow to www.fidelitycharitable.org. And there is a plethora of information that can add to some of the items I talked about earlier on that will give you additional insight.
Thank you, Dr. Osborne. And for our viewers, also, if you have questions, we are more than happy to take your call or email and guide you through this process as well. As we stated before, this is an important part of our financial planning process. Dr. Osborne, I can't thank you enough for your time and generosity. I want you to share with us some final closing thoughts. And for anyone watching this webinar and the recorded version later, your life story is amazing. Your success. You're highly regarded at UCLA as a a philanthropist and a mentor to many people. What can you tell our viewers here in your final closing thoughts?
Well, Danilo, it's been a pleasure to talk with you for this bit of time, and I admire what you and your colleagues at Gerber Kawasaki are engaged in.
Thank
You're
you.
part of this generation, and to think that philanthropy, in terms of time, talent, and treasure, is something you worry about is commendable. So
Thank
I would
you.
say to anybody watching this particular podcast is, talk to your advisor,
Hmm.
talk to your family about what your goals from the point of view of charity might be. Uh, Giving back of some sort, it seems to me to be important to almost anybody these days, and you can help. For individuals, I say give now.
Hmm.
Don't let uh, you know The enemy of perfect leads you to paralysis. Just
Mhm.
get started, get involved, and that's how you begin to make a difference. It will be pleasurable, and you will like it. Uh, and only can doing that can we bring people together. And I will leave you with one final thought, and I got to credit Sir Winston Churchill for
Mhm.
this. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. So learn to give. Thank you, Danilo.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Words of wisdom. It's been a pleasure.